Are you an established small business owner or aspiring entrepreneur? Would you like professional advice to help your business grow and succeed? Well, look no further. The Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center is the territory's #1 resource to move your business forward. Enjoy no-cost advising, low-cost training, and technical assistance from experts in both the public and private sectors. The VI SBDC is nationally accredited and sustained by the University of the Virgin Islands and the U.S. Small Business Administration. Visit us at our locations on St. Thomas, St. John, or St. Croix, and follow us on social media at VI SBDC. For easy access to all our training and networking events, be sure to join our newsletter and download the VI SBDC app. The Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center, here to help your business start, grow, and succeed.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the VI SBDC's hosting of the Business Development Series. Today's webinar is the Business Plan Canvas, Designing Your Entrepreneurial Journey. Today's session covers the reasons to develop a business plan, what to include in the summary, the executive summary, company information, product service, HR, marketing, operations, and financial plans, and tips for writing that successful business plan. This information is helpful for any business owner, entrepreneur, or potential business owner. Today's lead presenter is VI SBDC Advisor, Mr. Daryl Edwards. Mr. Daryl Edwards is the managing member of Straight Path Consulting, LLC, a business established in 2011 in St. Thomas, United States, Virgin Islands. The company offers a wide range of business, personal, financial, and career consulting services customized to serve customers' needs, such as analyzing business ideas, business plan preparation, promotional strategies, developing a personal financial plan, becoming financially secure, getting out of debt, college preparation, etc. Mr. Edwards has counseled clients since 2001 while employed as a business counselor and later as a business consultant on a contractual basis with the VI SBDC. He is also a part-time instructor at the University of the Virgin Islands, where he has taught small business management, introduction to business, and the freshman development seminar since 2008. Mr. Edwards has also taught courses for the VI SBDC in business plan preparation and managing personal finances. His educational background includes a Bachelor of Arts degree in business with a concentration in computer information systems here at the University of the Virgin Islands, a Bachelor of Arts degree in accounting from the University of the Virgin Islands, a Master of Business Administration at the University of the Virgin Islands, and a certificate in personal financial planning from Florida State University. So without further ado, let me just say that you can place your questions in the chat and they will be addressed either directly in the chat by Mr. Edwards or later during our question and answer segment. A copy of this presentation will be attached to the post-survey email sent after the live event. So without further ado, Mr. Edwards, the floor is yours.
Good evening, good afternoon. Things will be good. I call it evening instead of morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm so accustomed to doing these presentations in the evening. I guess that's why I said good evening. But yes, just like what Sharika said, and she gave me a great background, so we don't need to go into this too much. But the ideal presentation for today would be one like this. It'll be more of a discussion rather than a presentation. If you have a question, please ask them during the presentation. Either raise your hand, unmute yourself, or you could put it in the chat. And Sharika, I'll ask your assistance because I might not see if somebody's hand is raised. So I'll ask your assistance. And so I don't want to just be talking. I prefer that we cover the things that you want to cover concerning the business plan. There's so many aspects of the business plan that we can discuss, but I would like to really cover the items or the aspects of the plan that pertains to you, that you want to cover. It's not about what I want to cover, it's what you want to hear. So I prefer that you do that. So feel free to ask your questions during the presentation. So this guy named Daryl Edwards, you guys just met him like maybe 5-10 seconds ago. He made this statement. He said that every business, and notice he underlined the word every, he said every business has a business plan. Agree? Disagree? Yes, no, maybe so. What are your thoughts on it? I throw it out to you guys. You could either unmute yourself. I prefer that you unmute yourself and speak, or you could put it in the chat.
I would say agree. I guess maybe he's differentiating a real business and between some type of maybe like some side hustle, you know.
So what you're saying is that a real business would have a business plan, but a side hustle wouldn't have a business plan.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? That's an interesting take on it. Anybody else? Every business has a business plan. Every. Notice we underlined the word every. So even if it's a side hustle, this guy named Daryl Edwards believed that every business, side hustle, serious business, every business has a business plan. So I guess Jason would disagree with me.
Good day. Well, good morning to all. Well, based on this statement, every business has a business plan. It tells me every business person entrepreneur who starts a business has a plan to succeed, to make some money, but they may not all have it documented. Yes. Thank you.
Hit it on the head. Okay, somebody put in the chat, one person said they agree, the other person say they all do. They may not necessarily follow the traditional concept of a plan, but I agree. Interesting. Interesting. Did everybody respond? I'm hoping that everybody did respond. I think so. I'm not sure who else. A few more seconds. Anybody else who wants to chime in on that statement? Notice I call him a not so wise philosopher. So maybe that's the reason why he's not so wise. But yes, Barbara brought up a very good point. I think every business has a business plan. But again, just like what you guys said, sometimes the plan is up here in the head and it's not on paper. We want you guys to put the plan on paper. And somebody said it might not be a traditional business plan. Again, that would have to be one that's on paper. And when we say on paper, of course, we mean it doesn't have to necessarily be a physical paper. It could be on a computer screen. Yes. But this is what a business plan is. So I stick by my statement. I think every business has a business plan. The challenge is that whenever I meet with clients, and I still meet with clients, and by the way, I'm still working with the Small Business Development Center. I'm a part-time employee. I used to work with them full-time, as you could see from my bio. Whenever I meet with a client, I'm so amazed and impressed at what they tell me about their business, because during each consultation, I allow the client to just vent and just say, just tell me what your business idea is. And during that time, I'm very impressed. I give them 5, 10, 15 minutes, however long they need to tell me about your business idea. And I'm pleasantly surprised at the things that they tell me. And sometimes I tell them, okay, what you just told me for the last 15 minutes, all you need to do is put it on paper. And that's when you see them. just the same thing that you just expressed to me so eloquently for 15 minutes, just put it on paper and you'll have an excellent business plan. So I think that's the challenge for some people, is putting it on paper. They have the plan up here in their head. They have the strategies of this is how the business is going to be successful. You just need to put it in writing. And as you can see by our description, we want it to be objective, meaning that you're looking at your idea objectively. When I was being trained to prepare business plans, the person who was training me used to work in a bank. And he used to work on the other side, receiving business plans and being part of the team that would make a decision as whether or not the bank is going to fund the plan or not. And one of the things he told me that should be part of the business plan, you need to answer questions before they're asked. So when you're looking at your business idea, think about the questions somebody would have. Somebody who doesn't know anything about your business or this industry, what questions would they have? And try to answer those questions beforehand. But I like the part of it that's objective, meaning that you have looked at this realistically and you realize that, yes, to launch this business is going to have some challenges, but this is how I'm going to overcome these challenges. Very important. The purpose of the business plan, most people think of the business plan only when they're seeking financing. A lot of people started the business on their own, out of pocket, and then they decided they need money to expand. And so they go to the bank and the bank say, okay, you need a business plan. And then they come rushing to SBDC and they say, I need a business plan by next week, which generally doesn't happen. It takes a while to prepare the plan. But believe it or not, there are other purposes of the plan. It's not only to seek financing, it's also to solicit partners. If you want somebody to be a partner in your business or an investor, then one of the things that would kind of swing their decision would be the business plan. Show them a business plan. You could say, this is my business plan. Take a look at it and then see if you're interested in becoming a partner. Landlords, believe it or not, some landlords want business plan. For example, when they were first populating Crown Bay Center, some of my clients applied. A couple of them did get in to the Crown Bay Center. But one of the things that the landlord required is that you have to submit to them your financial projections. So I got a lot of hours with clients having to submit. So yes, some landlords want to see, your financial projections or your business plan. Provides a sense of direction. I'm sure you guys have heard this saying, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. They have different types of business plans: a startup plan, internal plan, standard business plan. And a lot of it is based on the who the end user is, and what is the purpose of this plan. And by the way, as I told you guys before, my plan is to just zip through these slides. If you want me to slow down and emphasize a point, just interrupt me and say, hey, I want you to emphasize this point a little more. If you don't do that, I'm going to zip right through. Okay. Now, for a business plan to be effective, they need to have these elements, and these are the same elements that makes a business successful. You have to have sufficient demand, adequate supply, effective management, and the business has to make sense. And you notice how we spell the word sense with a $sign. So I think you understand what that refers to. So let's go to these individually. Sufficient demand, you need to have enough demand for the business, and this should be shown in the plan as well. What is the demand for this business? You should have enough demand to generate a positive cash flow, not a profit. There's a slight difference between cash flow and profit. In an ideal world, they will be equal, but we can discuss this later. If you want to know the difference, like I said, when we reach the financial part of our discussion, you could say, Edwards, tell me the difference between the cash flow and the profit. Somebody put something in the chat. They all do. They might. Let me look at the new message. Good one. Can we get oh, somebody wants a copy of the presentation. Yes, as Ms. Phillips said, everybody's should get a copy of the presentation. So yes, you will get a copy. Okay. So yes, you can take notes if you want to, but you will get a copy of this presentation. It should be, the demand is something you should be able to measure demand. How do you measure demand? There's several ways to measure demand. Think about it. How do you measure whether there's a demand for the products and services? And this next bullet point is very important. The demand should not only be for the business, but also for the products as well. Because sometimes you have a business where the products itself, there's a demand, there's a established demand for the products, but people may not want to purchase the products from the business. They might want to purchase the products everywhere. So you have to establish that, yes, we know, take something like, for example, cell phones, a cell phone service. Everybody and the grandmother has a cell phone, but people may not want to purchase the cell phone or the cell phone service from you. They want a cell phone, but not necessarily from your business. So the cell phone has demand, but the service or the service might not have the demand from your business. So you have to establish in the plan that there's a demand. People want our cell phone service because, and you have to explain to them why. Sometimes you have to create the demand. The demand might not be there naturally. You might have to create it. And there's some strategies that you can use to create demand. And these are some instances where you have to create the demand. Usually if the business is new, or the products are new, or the products might not be new, but they might be new to this market. For example, there are products and services that are already existing elsewhere, but they may not be existing in the United States Virgin Islands. So you have to kind of create the demand for those products or services.
Into happiness
Somebody had a question?
to connect to a journey.
I didn't understand. Could you repeat? I didn't understand that question. Or maybe put it in the chat. I'm not sure, but I wasn't hearing the person clearly.
I believe that was an error, Mr. Edwards. You can go ahead.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, okay, okay. Good, good, good. Got it, got it, got it, got it. Okay, so I'm admitting people as they come in. These are industries that regularly have to create demand. New artists in entertainment, movies, etc. Technology, because we know technology advances very quickly, usually for services, especially if the service is new, and for health products. These are industries that regularly have to create the demand. There's not a, there may not be a demand for the product and you have to create it. And we're going to get into some ways of how to create it. How do you actually create the demand? Focus advertising, that's a good way. I'm not sure if they still have the infomercials. I know they used to be popular a couple of years ago. Some of you might not be old enough to remember them, but they used to be focused infomercials for like maybe a half hour, and they used to just focus on one product. And wait, there's more. And they used to spend 30 minutes just focusing on this one product. So they used to really intensify their promotion of the product. Regular or focus. Infomercials, as we said, the product or service sampling. You commonly see them in supermarkets. And of course, you have to be careful because sometimes people just like free thing. So if you're sampling your product and you want feedback, that's the key. You want feedback on your product. You want to know how does this product taste, look, or whatever feedback you're soliciting. And you have to make sure that people get provide feedback, because if not, people just like free thing. Okay. Seminars and presentations. I think this is a very underutilized strategy, because I don't want to speak on behalf of the SBDC, but I remember when I was working there full time, that they used to actually allow people to utilize their facilities. I'm not sure if it's still in place, to utilize the facilities if you want to have like a targeted type of advertising. And even if they don't provide that service, at least you could find other places. What you do is you have a seminar or webinar, not, I guess a webinar would do as well, but you have people meet in person. And this way you could demonstrate your product or service to people. And it's very concentrated. Back in our days, it used to be, they used to rent the training facilities for, you know, a specific price. Of course, the price might have gone up. But even though we offered that, a lot of people never took advantage of that. And I used to be so disappointed because I know some of my clients had products and services that they should have utilized that service to promote their products. And the rate was very reasonable. Educational literature written or online. This is how you create the demand. Sometimes you see this in the newspaper. One business I say that does this a lot right now is Mike's Paint Store. I don't necessarily read all of the ads, but a lot of times they go out of their way to explain why their products are different from their competitors. They really go out of their way to explain it. And I think that's one way of creating the demand for your products. And of course, you have to be able to measure it. And the typical way that we measure demand is by surveys, customer feedback, product testing. Once you get the now in analyzing the demand, you don't want to just, you know, depend on your emotions or your personal experience. And I'll give you guys an example of this. One client came to me, this is when I was working with the SBDC full time, and she was looking, she was in the market for some particular types of products. And because she couldn't find them on island, she made the assumption that there's a demand for these types of products, and there's no place on the island that sells them. There are places on the island that sell them, but not in the quantity and quality or variety that she wanted. And so just based on that alone, she decided that she's going to launch a business. Now, when she came to me, I was very skeptical, and I told her, I said, I don't know if there's really if the demand is enough for this business to be successful. And even the loan officer at the bank said the same thing. They said they don't think there's enough demand. But believe it or not, we prepared the business plan, and she was funded. The bank, the same bank that was skeptical, they actually provided her the money. She opened the business. And so it just so happened that I was in the market for those types of products at one point, and I decided, okay, I know I have a client, and she told me where her business is. So I actually went to her business to purchase the products. And when I went in there, I was like, wow. There were cobwebs on the products. So, you know, cobwebs develop when there's not a lot of movement on the products. Cobweb, if things are moving, you're not going to see cobwebs. There were actually cobwebs on the product. There was dust and cobwebs. I mean, the products were not moving. She was not generating a lot of sales. And needless to say, the business failed. And not only the question of the demand, but where the business was located. You had to go like around the corner and then around another corner. And they didn't have sufficient signage to say, okay, this business is located here. They didn't have the signage. So there was a lot of issues with that. So this is an example of depending on your personal experience and using your emotions to say that there's a demand for these products, and there really wasn't. Okay, I'm looking at the mess. Some people say they can't hear me. Oh, okay.
You're coming across fine. It may
Okay,
be
good,
someone's
good,
internet
good.
connection.
Yeah, okay. Just checking through. Okay. Also study trends. I don't know if you guys know the story of McDonald's. I think most people know about McDonald's. I don't know if you guys know the background story of McDonald's. And I don't know if this was because the owner, or if I remember correctly, the person who actually purchased McDonald's, because I don't think he was the founder, His name was Mr. Ray Kroc. I don't know if he just happened to fall into this situation, but the reason why McDonald's was successful back in the 50s or 60s, I don't know some of you don't go back that far, is because there was a trend in the society. Think about it. There was a trend in families during the 50s and 60s. And that's what made McDonald's famous, popular. You guys think about what, even though you might not have been born in the 50s or 60s, think about the trend. There was a trend in socially, family. Think about what trends could have been possible at that time that caused McDonald's to be successful. Think about the fast food and think about what trends you think could have made McDonald's successful. Yes, somebody said Rick Kroc brought it from McDonald's brothers. Yes, you're correct. So what are some trends you think that made this successful? Going through the chat. Women had to fill a gap of the men that they were deployed, so they didn't get to be as homemakers as before. The growing workforce. Exactly right. You guys are on point. What happened is in the 50s and the 60s, you found more women entering the workforce. And so because of that's a trend, you're finding more women entering the workforce. And just like what one of the people said, the workforce started to increase. And so back in the, I guess prior to that, the traditional place for the woman was the husband go out to work, the woman stay home and cook. But since the woman is now working, let's go out to eat. So that was a trend that was happening. Somebody put something else in the chat. Moving from farms to cities. So yes, there's a lot of trends that happen. So keep up with these trends. Please keep up with these trends because this can show that there will be a demand for your business or your products. Very good. Of course, there could be demand for the product, but you have to be able to supply that demand. And you need to supply the demand based on all of these factors. Quality. People might want, again, going back to the cell phone, they want the cell phone, but they want a certain quality in terms of response and clarity and making sure the service is always available. I know we have a lot of issues with that recently. The timeliness, the shipping, that's a big issue with us in the US Virgin Islands. Do you guys know why it's an issue? Especially with items coming in to the US Virgin Islands. Do you guys know why it's an issue? One of my professors gave us a reason why this is an issue, why we're having these challenges. It takes long for things to come in. Going out is not really that much of a problem, but coming in is a problem. Importation, yeah, a little more specific. You're on the right track. We want you to be a little more specific. Importation. Let me see what they put in the chat. Customs, yes, because we are in a international customs zone. My professor told me that when the United States purchased what is now the US Virgin Islands in 1917, Denmark had a clause in the quote unquote sales agreement that they wanted to continue to do business with the Danish West Indies at the time, now US Virgin Islands. So they had a clause that the US Virgin Islands would remain in the international customs zone. Residual effects from Cuba's economic sanctions. That's probably part of it as well. And so we're still in an international customs zone. And I asked the question, why are we still in the international customs? Of course, the politicians are the ones who would have to clear that up. And one of my clients, believe it or not, he was behind the push to get us to clarify it. But unfortunately, he didn't get it done. And part of the reason he didn't get it done was because of his position. If I tell you who he is, you'll say, yeah, I could see why he was having problems getting this done. But yeah, so all of these, you have to take into consideration timeliness, things being shipped into the US Virgin Islands. You have to take that as when you're building your supply chain, meaning if you're having products being delivered to you, inventory, you have to take that into consideration. So you might have to order your inventory earlier than normal. The customer service, the products or service have to be delivered with great customer service. The price, we know that's a big issue as well. The convenience, the ambience. Do you realize that there's some businesses, even if you have the money, they would not allow you to purchase their products for resale, even if you have the money, unless they come and they visit your location, your retail location. Even if you have the money, they are going to come because they consider their products to be high-end, and they, in their minds, if the product is sold in an environment that's not high-end, that devalues the products. So some companies actually would visit your retail and they inspect it to make sure it's of their standard before they allow you to sell their products. So that's something you have to consider. Effective management, that's another important element of an effective business plan. You have to show that you're a business owner, so you automatically become a manager, whether you're ready or not. And these are the principles of management. You have staffing. These are things that managers do. You staff, hire people, you plan for the organization, you lead people, you organize, and you control. And a lot of people are very good when it comes to their products and services, but when it comes to the management, they have challenges. If you need management assistance, please seek help from the SBDC. And there's other resources that you can seek help. But this has to be shown in the business plan as well, that you're going to be the one to manage this business. Now, making sense, the other element of an effective business plan, I came up with these two definitions of making sense. The startup cost, the cost to actually launch the business can be reasonably obtained, and the business can generate a positive cash flow. As we said, cash flow is more important than profits. And we'll explain more about the difference if you want to when we get further into the presentation. Now, the specific sections of the plan, the table of contents, this is very important. For someone, for example, like me, when I review a business plan, I don't necessarily read it cover to cover. I skip. I go to certain sections. As we go along, I'll tell you which sections I jump to first. But I jump around. I jump to this section first, then I go to this section, and I jump around. So the table of contents is important. So I need to know what page this particular section begins on. And of course, you prepare it last because you don't know what pages items are going to appear on until you actually finish the document. Now, when I was being trained in business plan preparation and review, I was told that this is the most important section of the business plan, the executive summary. This is what I was told. I differ from that a little bit. Not to say that I'm right. I think all the sections of the plan are important, but I kind of differ. And one of the reasons why, as I said, the person who was training me used to work in a bank. And what he said is that in the bank, what they do is when they receive a loan package, which includes a business plan, they jump to the executive summary. And they say that what they do, again, he's giving me some behind the scenes information. He said that what they do is they review the executive summary and they make a preliminary decision as to whether or not they're going to fund this or not. Because in the executive summary, if you have a loan request, obviously, if you submit it to a bank, you have a loan request, they're going to look at the request. Okay, this person wants $100,000. What equity, what collateral do they have? Okay, they have equity, they have collateral. And so my former supervisor said in the bank, what that used to help determine whether or not they're going to set this one aside, or are they going to look into it further based on the executive summary? So he said that this is the most important part of the plan. Let me see what some people are saying in the chat. Competence, collateral, and character. Yes, that is definitely part of the plan. I look at the executive summary. It's sort of like a table of contents, so to speak, or it's a summary of the sections that are going to follow. You give them a little bit. You tell them, okay, this business has started. Tell them when the business started, or if it hasn't started, if it's a startup, you tell them when you want to start the business. And it's usually one page, but you kind of touch a little bit on the sections that are going to follow. We need $100,000. This is how we're going to repay the money. This is what we have in equity. This is what we have in collateral, et cetera, et cetera. So you kind of whet the appetite a little bit. Then there's another section. It depends on what template you use. The template that I use, this section is actually called the business plan, which kind of sounds kind of strange because the whole document is a business plan, but they actually have a section called the business plan. Other section, we'll call it the overview. This is where you go into a little more detail about the business and the owners itself. History, the structure, the location, hours of operation, et cetera, et cetera. And you're going to find yourself repeating information a lot. That's one of the things that clients have told me. Regardless of what template they use, they say, it's like you repeating the information. Sometimes you have to repeat for emphasis. And I think that's one of the bullet points we have in a later section. Now, in my opinion, and of course, I don't know how important my opinion is, but in my opinion, this is the most important section of the plan. The customer, market, and industry analysis. When I'm reviewing a plan, this is the first section I jump to. I need to see if there's a demand for what you plan to sell, and how did you determine whether there's a demand for it? That's the first thing I jump for. Again, like I said, I don't know how much my opinion matters, but that's the most important. This is the most important part of the plan to me, where you analyze in this section, and I'm basing this on the template that I use. Some templates are going to break this up. They'll have a separate section for the customer, a separate section for the market, and a separate section for the industry analysis. In the template that I use, they're basically in the same section, but they do have the subheadings. So it just depends on the template you use. You will identify your target market. And I think we will discuss this in greater detail. And really most important is the competition. What's already out there as it relates to competition. If you have conducted any market research, you're going to put this in this section of the plan. Target market, people most likely to purchase your products. It identifies who you target for your promotional activities. Some people have a challenge with understanding target market, but the easiest way to explain it is this. It's supposed to be, I think it's 7 or 8 billion people in the world today. I think there's 8 billion. I don't keep up with this, but I think let's say there's 8 billion people in the world presently. Of course, they can't accurately measure it, but if there's 8 billion people in the world, as a small business, it's very difficult to direct your promotional activities to 8 billion people. So rather than trying to direct your promotional activities to 8 billion people, just narrow it down a little bit and say, yes, we're going to target women age 18 to 54 who live on the eastern end of St. Thomas. It doesn't mean that these are the only people who are going to purchase your products, but as a small business, you have limited resources. So you do some general promotion, but you really want to focus on people who most likely would purchase your product, who would be interested in purchasing your product. There's another comment in the, yes, somebody said your target audience. These are the people who most likely would purchase your products. These are people who you're going to target. Very important. Competition, this is a very important part of analyzing a business idea, because if there's a lot of competition, should you really enter the market? That's a question I have to you guys. Let's say you're entering an industry and there's already you have a lot of competition in this particular market. Do you still enter? Yes, no, maybe so. And you have established competition. People have been in business for over 20 years. They're established. So should you enter this market as a new business? Hypothetical question. Again, oh, let me go to the chat and see what somebody put in the chat. It depends on how lucrative and how big the market is. Yes, it depends on that because, again, you could have a lot of competition, but your competition could be weak. Even if they've been in business for 20, 30 years, they could be weak. And it's up to you to identify the weaknesses in their offerings and say, we're going to offer something different. Okay, but it's important that you do the research and you display the research in the business plan. Research your competitors. It's very important to be honest with your analysis of your competitors. Yes, you have to list their strengths as well. Yes. When I'm working with some clients and I ask them about the competition, you would swear by their response that they don't have any competition. I'm 100% better than all of these guys. I tell them, let's be honest. You know, this person has been in business for 20, 30 years. So they have to be doing something right. Even if having a large customer base, that alone is a competitive advantage. Okay. Somebody else put something in the chat. How can we disclose a list of competitors as an example? You're bringing up a very good point. You just list them. You do your analysis of your competition and list them. And the reason why I said this brings up a good point is because one of my clients was working with this client. I was actually working with his wife. His wife was the one he's the main operator of the business, but his wife is the one who deals with the administrative part of the business. So his wife would prepare the business plan and then email it to me, and I would provide my feedback. When it came to the competition, that section of the business plan, she called me, his wife called me and said that you're having a little problem here because she conducted a competitive analysis, and I think her competitive analysis was good. I think it was good. But when he read it, he interpreted it to mean that that we were speaking bad about his competition, and his competition include his mentor. In other words, he started off the business working for someone, and then of course he branched off and did his own thing. So he looked at the analysis that his wife prepared. He looked at it like, you guys are speaking bad about my competitor who happened to be my mentor. And so I had to explain to his wife. I said, no, you're just being realistic. You're saying that this is what they offer, this is what we offer. And you're making a comparison. And so I don't know what she told him, but somehow he managed to accept it. And so that person brought up a very good point. Yes. And there's somebody who asks another statement. This person said, in most markets and most endeavors, there's usually only like top 10 competitors. You really have to worry about the rest of the competition that is really weak. It's an interesting take on it. So I guess what you're saying, and I don't want to put words in people's mouth, but I guess what this person is saying is that you may not be able to tap the top competitors. You're coming into the market with the understanding that I'm not going to tap the competitors who are really on top in the industry. I'm not going to come in there right away and topple them. I'm going to try to topple the ones who are on the lower end, so to speak. That's an interesting concept. It's a very interesting concept because let me see if I have it. Looking ahead to see. No, I don't have it. There's a and I don't know how well you guys can see my hands, but of course, this is back in the day. I don't know how things are now, but let's say 10, 15, 20 years ago, in the insurance market, the top business in the insurance market was State Farm, the number one. And then again, you might not see my hand, but number two was Allstate. And then number three was Geico, right? So State Farm is up here. Of course, I really like to show my hands wider, but if I do it, you're not going to see the screen. So State Farm is up here. Number two is Allstate, and number three is Geico. And so I noticed that in most of the ads, Allstate, which is number two, they were targeting Geico in their ads. So I'm wondering why, if you're number two, how come you're not attacking number one? Why are you attacking number three? You're number two, why are you attacking your ads at number three? And then I thought about it. I say, you know something, because the gap between State Farm and Allstate is so wide, is that their strategy is, look, we're not going to catch these guys. We're so far behind them. But Geico, at the time, Geico was the fastest growing company. And so Allstate figured that, you know something, instead of trying to fight these guys or try to reach these guys who are much ahead of us, let's try to keep these guys down. So that was their strategy. So that kind of mirrors what this person said in the chat. Somebody asked a question, do you think we should rank the competition from strongest and weakness and target the weakest to gain a foothold in the market and then work there? That's an interesting concept. I personally don't do that. I list, and of course, this information is based on what the client brings to me. I just list the competition in order. I've never ranked them, but I could see some merit in ranking them, because this is going to show whoever's going to be reviewing the plan that you know the industry. And so you know that this business is the number one in the business. So it might have some merit in ranking. It's just that I've never done it, but I could see the merit in doing so, in ranking them. And of course, you would have to list your strategies of, are you going to try to catch this person who's ahead of you? This is the number one industry, or are you going to just come in someplace in the middle and try to fend off those other? Again, I think it's a matter of personal choice, but I've never ranked them. I've never ranked, and probably it's because my clients have never really given me the ranking. But I think, like I said, I think there's some merit in doing so. But you guys are asking some very good questions and making some very good comments in the chat. I really like that. This is basically how I want the presentation to go, not just me talking. I want you guys to speak as well. And feel free to unmute yourself as well. Feel free to do that. So everybody could, get the gist of your discussion as well. Yeah, so it's important to include off-island and internet-based competitors if it applies to you. Because a lot of my clients say, well, there's nobody on the island that's selling this. Yeah, but people are buying it from off-island. They're buying it from Amazon or Walmart or whatever. So you have to include those off-island competitors. Also consider substitute products. A substitute product would be a product that's not exactly the same as yours, but people are utilizing it. A good example would be a plane and a boat. You could have a plane because, let's say you want to start a business that operates a plane service from St. John to St. Thomas. So your competition, it's easy to say there's no competition because there's no other plane that flies from St. John to St. Thomas, but there's a substitute, and the substitute is a ferry. Of course, there's a lot of differences, but it's a substitute. So you have to list your substitute alternatives. I was teaching a business plan course one time, and this one student was really, for some reason, she had a big problem with the word competition. I guess in her mind, it's like you're in the ring and you're fighting a competition. And so I told them, I said, okay, instead of using the word competition, you could use the word alternatives. because you could either buy the products or services from us, or you could buy it from these guys. If you buy it from us, this is what you get. If you buy it from those guys, this is what you get. So in her business plan project, her title was alternatives, not competition. Interesting. And a competitive analysis. Oh, we went back a little too far. Competitive analysis is a good way to create the demand. I like a side-by-side comparison. I haven't used it in a while, but this is there's another slide that shows a side-by-side comparison. It's on a slide after this present one. But these are the 7 basic ways to establish a competitive advantage. Price, and understand the difference between price and cost. Price is what you charge to your customers, and cost is what it costs you. If you buy a product for $5, that's your cost, and you charge $10, that's the price, okay? The quality or the efficiency of the product, the service, the variety, the convenience, the customer service, and the credibility, okay? And of course, you should know that you should try to be the leader in several of these categories. And price is the easiest of these advantages. Price is the easiest one to duplicate. All they have to do is lower the price. Of course, there's consequences in lowering the price, because if you lower the price, that decreases your profit, but is the easiest one for your competitors to duplicate. A lot of my clients, when they're entering an industry, they say, I'm going to be the lowest price. Yeah, you could be the lowest price, which is good, but then your competition might just simply lower the price. And if you don't have any other competitive advantage, then you might not last too long. But this slide, this is the side-by-side comparison. So it shows the different categories, the price. And then some people do it the opposite way. They show their business first, and then they show the competition. Either way has an effect. But what you do with a side-by-side comparison, you pick the items or the elements that you have the advantage in. Okay. You should include goals in your business plan, because this shows the read of the plan, and of course it depends on who's reading the plan, whether it's for financing or you're trying to secure a partner. They show that the business has some growth. You're not just thinking about right now, you're thinking beyond. You separate your goals, long-term, short-term. Of course, your goals should be SMART. And this is a distinction between a poorly stated goal. You want to make a lot of money. Of course, I think all of us want to make a lot of money, but you want it to be specific. After our first year, specific time, you're going to generate 200,000 in sales, a specific amount instead of a lot of money. How much is a lot? I love to include a SWOT analysis in my business plan. Some templates don't have SWOT analysis. They don't even have goals, but I like to include it. The SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is an honest analysis of your business. Yes, you have to include your weaknesses and your threats. Very important that you're comfortable enough to do that. And I have a lot more information on all of this is part of strategic plan. I have a lot more information, and we could get into greater details on it at a later time. The promotional plan, this is how you are going to promote your business. Again, you be specific. I personally like to include a pre-opening strategy and an ongoing monthly strategy. In other words, before you open the business, this is how we're going to promote it. And then after you open, you're going to have an ongoing strategy. Sometimes you don't have to promote that much once you open. There's certain businesses, for example, a lot of our large supermarkets, they don't do any promotion unless they're having a special. Otherwise, they don't promote the business because they're already entrenched. So they don't have to do that. So there's 3 different ways of promotion. You have the personal selling, direct marketing. You go up to somebody or you tell them one-on-one about your business idea. Then we have advertising and sales promotion. Sales promotion could be door-to-door, person-to-person. You stand in a populous location and you give out your flyers about your business and your business cards. There's some advantages of doing that. The personal interaction, you could answer questions. People might have questions about what you're selling. But of course, there are disadvantages. It takes a long time to do it. And if you're having other people do it for you, you have to, more than likely, might have to pay them. So there's a cost involved in it. There's advertising is more impersonal. That's like through social media, television, newspaper. And there are advantages and disadvantages of each type of promotional media. And I'm going to include that as an attachment. When you guys get a copy of this, I'm going to include the advantages and disadvantages of each type of promotional, or each type of advertising. Then the sales promotional, like trinkets, souvenirs, specialty items. They work well, but a lot of time people just like the item. For example, t-shirts. You print your business name in the t-shirt. The challenge is some people just want the t-shirt and they don't really care about, the business. So that's one of the challenges of that. This section of the plan is very important. I used to skip this over, to be honest with you. But as I started to grow as a business consultant, I realized that this is a very important part of the plan and of your operation as a business owner. How do you plan to keep records? Some people still do the old-fashioned way with pen and paper. Some people use accounting software, for example. The accounting software has advantages because they automatically update your inventory. So in this section of the plan, you're going to really state, and you should have a plan for this as well. This should be included in your business plan. It's a very important part of operating a business, having the information. The management and personnel, this is where you would list your background. Don't be shy about listing your background. Don't be shy about it. Distinguish your personnel. Some are part-time, some are casual. Include your professional team, which includes a business consultant. You could include me as your business consultant if you want to. In this section, what I do, products and services, what I do is I list as many products and services as possible. For example, if we have for example, a lot of my clients are farmers, right? And so in the executive summary, I would list a general category of, they're gonna grow fruits, vegetables, and herbs. I would just state that in the summary. But in this section, I would expound on it. And I would list, these are the fruits they plan to grow. These are the vegetables they plan to grow. These are the herbs that they plan to grow. So I'd be very explicit in this section. List as many as possible with the prices. So let's jump into the financial part of the plan. Some people run from this section because some people have a phobia. They're afraid of numbers. But believe it or not, you can, even if you don't have a background in finance or accounting, you can prepare this section. I've had clients who've prepared this section on their own, and they never did it before. And what they created was something, it needed a little tweaking, but believe it or not, it was wonderful what they created. So we have some myths and some truths. Some people think that if you just inflate the sales numbers, how much the business is going to generate, it's going to increase the chances of getting the loan. Nope. What I found out is the more realistic the numbers, when I started to put more realistic numbers into the plans, I started to get more loans approved. Because the thinking is, if you just inflate the number, say I'm gonna make $1 million a month, when in fact it's customary to make 10,000 in the industry in the US Virgin Islands, you know, the bank is gonna think, this person really think they're gonna make $1 million a month? We're not gonna give them any money. So again, you don't need to have a background in finance or accounting. It's similar to preparing a budget. We should be preparing personal budgets. This is how much I make, this is how much I want to spend. It's the same thing. If you're not good with numbers and you can just let your accountant prepare the projections, yes, you can do that, but you need to understand the numbers. Because when you have to review the plan with a loan officer, you need to know what the numbers mean. Even if you're not an expert in it, just at least know this is what this number means. One of the challenges is presenting the worst case scenario. Because we always been told, put your best foot forward. But when it comes to financial projections, you should present the worst case scenario. A common line that I have when I'm preparing financial projections is, we expect to generate $10,000 a month. But if, let's say we have a slow, let's say things start off slow, even if we make 7,500 per month, we're still going to be profitable. That's a common thing that I put. We expect to make more, but you try to present the lowest amount that's going to make you profitable. And again, once I started to do that, I started to get more loans approved. Surprise, surprise. Conduct your research. Always include operating cash. Operating cash is like a bank account for the business, a rainy day fund. I'm just going to breeze through these. Most banks they require 25% owner's injection, and it's not 25% of the loan. Look at it, it's calculated. You divide your contribution over the total cost. The total cost includes the amount of the loan. Let's say you're going for 50. I think we have an example here. No, we don't have an example. If you're going for a loan of $50,000 and you contribute in $18,000, the total cost of the project is $68,000. Your contribution is 18. So you divide the 18 by the 68. So most people think you divide the 18 by the 50. No, you divide the 18 by the total. The total, is, like I said, is the amount of the loan plus the amount you contributing. You have to contribute something. And what you contribute is not always in cash. As you said, the operating cash is like a rainy day fund for the business. And usually it's no more than 10 to 20% of the total amount of the loan. And there are some exceptions, but if you borrow $50,000 and most of it is going towards operating cash, especially if you're an existing business, the bank is going to raise a red flag for the bank. They're going to say, well, this business is in trouble. That's why they need the cash. But it could be that, you know, it could be a different reason why, you know, you need that 40,000 for. And I'm not going to show you any examples unless you want us to. But these are the statements you need to project, a cash flow statement. This basically shows cash coming in, cash going out. And you want to show seasonality. For example, some businesses, where you make the most money, that's a peak. Where you make the least amount of money, that's a valley. Some businesses make a lot of money during the tourist season. Some businesses make a lot of money during the holidays. It depends on the nature of the business. Now, this is the most controversial part of the financial projections, how much are you going to make in sales or revenue? And by the way, sales and revenues is basically the same. What we learned in accounting is that sales, they usually say sales for a business that's selling a product, and revenues is more for service, but they're basically the same thing. But these are some of the ways that you can project your sales. This is the most controversial part of the financial projections, because the bank is always skeptical. We don't believe they could generate this amount of sales. And this is why you have to kind of show the worst case scenario. But these are some methods that we use. We use a percentage of your target market. For example, if based on the census, if your target market is X among the people, use a percentage of that. Or you start with a small segment. A small segment of a day would be like an hour or a day. Time segment would be a day. That's the smallest time segment, usually a day. How much money can you make in a day? How much money can you make in a week and in a year? So you kind of project it outwards. Use a percentage of your capacity. A capacity is, for example, if you have a boat and the Coast Guard tells you that you could have 200 passengers on your boat, that's your capacity. So what you do is you project that I'm going to sell 50% of my capacity. So that's 50% of the 200 people. Now, should the owner be paid? What do you guys think? Yes, no, maybe so. Should you show in the business plan the owner being paid? While you guys are answering this question, let's look at the alternatives. If you don't pay the owner, then what you're showing is that we're going to reinvest the money back into the business, and we're going to wait until the business becomes profitable, and then we're going to take a salary. Let me see what this person, oh, we have one yes. Well, I think we have 10 people on the chat, 10 people on, we have 2 yeses. Let me see if this is a yes. Oh, we have 3 yeses. I should have put it in a poll. Oh, we have 4 yes. Everybody's saying yes. Wow, that's interesting. Any no's? Any no's in the house? Any no's in the house? As you said, the owner is also the manager, so I guess that person is justifying the answer. Again, like I said, when I was being taught to review and to prepare business plans, I remember this is a person who worked in the bank. So they said, if you don't take a salary, if the owner doesn't take a salary, it raises a red flag for the bank, because they're going to say, well, or I shouldn't say the bank, because some business plans are submitted to investors, the reviewer of the plan, the decision maker. If you don't take a salary, they're going to say, well, how is this person going to eat, live, unless they have another source. And again, this would be stated in the plan. The owner is not going to take a salary because the owner is still working at wherever they're working. I usually suggest that the owner take a small, you don't have to take a marketable salary, but I do recommend that they do take a salary, unless you're independently wealthy, and I think most of us are not. I'll tell you what I do personally. Personally, I take a percentage of what I make. And there's no really set percentage, it depends on you. Whenever I make money from my business, I take a percentage and I invest the remaining back into the business. So a lot of it depends on your situation, but I think most of us would eventually like a salary from the business. Oh, that's why we're doing this at some point. So I have another in the chat. Okay, somebody said they have to leave. Okay, no problem. We appreciate your attendance. And we have the profit and loss statement. An important part of this statement is the relationship between the sales and what they call the cost of sales. It's something very important. In other words, going back to that example, you're selling the product for $10. The cost of that product is $5. Every time you sell that product, your sales would be $10, and your cost of sales, or your cost of goods sold, would be $5. That's a very important relationship, because that relationship would kind of determine what's going to be your profit at the end. Now, what my strategy has been, as I told you guys before, is I like to show a very small net income. That's my strategy. When I first started to do this, I used to show, a lot, huge sales and a lot of, huge profit. Now I show a very small profit, but everything is covered. Sometimes my profit would be like maybe $2,000 to $4,000. But all of the bills are paid, electricity, everything is paid, even the owner is paid. But you have a very small profit, especially for startup business. And again, as I said, once I started to do that, I started to get more loans approved. So it's something to consider. The balance sheet is, you're going to show the assets of the business, the liabilities. The assets is what you own. Assets are, cash is an asset. The equipment, that's an asset. Liabilities is what you owe, OWE. Loans, including the loan that you're applying for, I would include that as a liability. And equity is the difference between the two. You subtract the liabilities from the assets, and that gives you the equity. And of course, you want to prepare your plan in advance. Before you open the business, that's when you should prepare it. At least 3 months before you need the money. When I tell people 3 months, they say 3 months, that's a long time. Yeah, because sometimes they take a while to make a decision. Sometimes you submit the loan package and then they have questions and then you have to resubmit this. So I say at least 3 months before you need the money. So about needing a business plan in a week, that generally is not going to cut it. And as we said before, review your plan objectively. Look at this as, look at the your plan as if you are a loan officer. Would you give this business $50,000 based on what you're seeing in the plan? And if not, then you could make the adjustments as necessary. Some other general tips about the plan. Some of these things I don't necessarily stick to as a hard, as a hard rule, so to speak. So let's get into some frequently asked questions. How long is all of this going to take me? So again, I'm going to be a politician, give you the politically correct answer. It depends. It depends. But the general frame that I use is 4 to 20 hours. And the reason I come up with these numbers is based on, I remember having a client, and this client was working, and he used to come into me on his lunch hour. And it took him 4 days, 4 lunch hours. So I look at that as the low end. We used to spend an hour a day on his plan, and believe, now it was a simple plan because, it was a lot simpler than more the complicated plan. So I say from 4 hours to 20 hours. How much does it cost? If you're working with us at VI SBDC, the cost would be $0. But if you have to pay somebody, the price ranges. it could be up to 25,000, and that's not a typo. What's the best template? Personally, I don't favor any template. I use a template that I feel comfortable with. Now, recently, the SBDC has developed a template, and again, I could share it with you guys if you want it. I personally prefer the look at the content as opposed to the template. To me, the content is more important. Now, there are some, when you're working with a loan officer and they say that they want you to use this template, by all means, go ahead and do that. If you want them to fund your business, do that. Template would be helpful. Yes, we have many templates. We have many templates. I can share it. I could include the template, the SBDC template in what I'm going to give to you guys in addition to this presentation, the one that SBDC uses. Yeah, the templates on the website as well as Business Plan Pro. There's a bunch of free templates. I have access to so many different templates. And when I send them to clients, I tell them, use the one that you feel comfortable with. Unless the decision maker points you to a specific template, use the one that you feel most comfortable with. Also, there's AI generated templates. I've seen business plans that are generated by AI, very impressive. Some of the SBDCs around the country are using them. The one that I saw at this meeting was very impressive. But again, you have to have the information to include or to generate the plan. Does a great business plan guarantee success? Nope. I've been in situations where the plan has been complimented. They say it's a great business plan, and they still deny the client because of other issues such as credit, collateral, etc. So all of those things you have to take into consideration. This is my contact information. Please, it's very important that you prepare something, even if it's not a complete plan, prepare something and work with an SBDC consultant. This is something very important. It's free. It makes a difference when you have something, as opposed to say, this is my idea, but I don't have a business plan. When you have a business plan, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's something that we could build on. It makes it a lot easier. And believe it or not, you get through faster as well. When you have something that we could build on, as opposed to starting it from scratch, it makes a big difference. So this is the last slide. Any question? We still have a few minutes for questions. I know you guys have been asking questions in between, but are there any other questions? As I said, I skipped through a lot of things, and you may not have questions now, but you could contact us later and get those questions answered. The last 12 or 13 minutes we use for any questions that you guys have. Or see a question in the chat. Do you just set up individual appointments? If you're not a client of the Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center, please register with them, and they would assign you to whichever any consultant at SBDC will do a great job. But if they assign you to me, I'll work with you. But it's best to go directly to the Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center. As I said, I'm working with them part-time. Okay, so contact them and they'll assign you to a consultant. Any other questions? I see another question in the chat. You guys are not unmuting yourself. Okay, in the chat, they put the link to signing up for SBDC. It's in the chat. The link is in the chat to register. And it's a very smooth process. 5 minutes or less, you could get registered. It's a very efficient process. Questions, comments?
Okay, Mr. Edwards, I think you did a pretty good job because it's pretty quiet at this point. But I guess we can go to the next slide and then I'll just give that outro and that'll still allow more time for questions.
Go ahead.
The VIS, oh, here we go. Can you repeat the cost for SBDC to help with a business plan? Oh, wow.
Oh, you're speaking to me?
That's a question in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Can you repeat the cost for SBDC to help with a business plan?
The cost. It's a six figures, 0.00000. I don't know if that's six, but yeah, we'll do it for free.
Alrighty, and we have another question. What have you noticed to be a common factor in successful businesses?
I kind of skipped that question. What have you noticed to be a common factor in successful businesses? I think the planning part and paying attention to detail. Record keeping is something very important. A lot of opportunities require you to have records. I remember a couple of years ago, there was a grant that was being given out. And one of the things you needed for the grant, one of the documents you needed was your financials for the previous 6 months. And a lot of businesses didn't have that. I was like, really? You have a business and you don't have your financials? Record keeping is something very, very important. You should be able to, even if you don't know the exact number, if I meet you on the street and I say, how much money did your business make last year? You should be able to give me a ballpark figure of how much money your business made last year. So I would say record keeping and planning. Of course, planning could be included in record keeping as well. I think those are the most important. And of course, looking for opportunities, as we said before. You have to have the demand for the product or services that you plan to sell. There has to be a demand. If the demand isn't there, as we said, you have to create the demand. I see another question in the chat. Would you suggest for background section if you're starting a business with little experience? What would you suggest for background section if you're starting the business with little experience? Okay, so this is a person that doesn't have experience in the industry, but you want to start it. Some people do that. Well, of course, the easy answer would be to try to find out as much about the industry as possible. It would be questioned, and I'll be upfront with you, it will be questioned. You don't have any experience in this industry, so why are you entering this industry? But some people enter the industry, and some industries is easy, the learning curve is easier to learn this particular industry than others. And you have to demonstrate your commitment to learning as much about the industry as possible. But it's better to have some level of experience and knowledge of the industry. It's another question in the chat. Thank you. If the business is like a medical office that offers a service instead of a example of how that can alter. Well, the business plan is for services and for products. It really doesn't matter that the same principles apply to products and services. It's just that, for example, your financials are going to be different. For example, with the sales and then the cost of sales, you wouldn't really have a cost of goods, so to speak, because you're selling a service. Sometimes what I do for clients is I put cost of service. It depends on the nature of the business. But to answer your question directly, it's not going to really change that much whether or not regardless of the industry, the basic principles are the same for the business plan. You need to have demand. You need to be able to supply that demand. You need to be able to manage the business, and the business has to make sense with a dollar sign. Those apply to any industry, regardless of what you're selling. Any other questions?
Okay, well, I can use this time wisely
Okay.
so persons can add more to the chat. The VI SBDC has so much more in store for you as VI small businesses. You can visit our website at www.visbdc.org, download the VI SBDC app on your mobile device from the appropriate app store, like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Google Business, and subscribe to the VI SBDC YouTube channel for new uploads of our on-demand webinars. Let me just preview a few of our upcoming trainings. Tomorrow we have Safety and Health Practices for USVI Businesses. On June 3rd, we have SBA Resources Every Small Business Should Know. On June 4th, we have VBOC. They're going to be presenting Introduction to Business Ownership. On June 11th, we have VBOC back again, presenting Understanding Markets and Competitive Space. On June 12th, we have How to Become a Federal Subcontractor. On June 13th, we have Pivoting for Growth, Turning Challenges into Opportunities. On June 17th, we have Securing an SBA Loan for Your Business, How to Get Approved. On June 18th, we have VBOC, The Economics of Small Business Startup. On June 20th, we have The Ripple Effect, How Small Steps Lead to Large Wins. All those webinars are available for registration or on our training portal, and there are more that were mentioned here today. So I still don't see any more questions. What's VIBAC?
VIBAC.
In terms of acronyms, VISBDC is the Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center. VIABC is the Virgin Islands Agriculture Business Center. VBOC is our Veterans Outreach Center, Veterans Business Outreach Center. So I'm not sure exactly which acronym you're referring to, but I just defined a few. Hopefully that helps. Okay. I think she meant VBOC,
Oh, BOC.
Yeah. not BOC, VBOC.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's not VIBOC. It's a Veterans Business Outreach Center.
Okay.
And we work closely. There's a district office for SBA, and so that covers Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. So we partner with them. They come in person to do workshops, and they also do webinars. Okay, so I don't see any more. You're welcome. I don't see any more questions, Mr. Edwards.
Okay. All right. I really appreciate. I think this is one of the first times that I really had so much interaction in the chat. I kind of wish that you guys would kind of verbalize it, but it's okay. It's okay. I don't mind the chat. I guess some people don't necessarily like to speak, but it was good. I really love the interaction. This is the ideal way of presenting, not just one person just banging them out all the time. They have the interaction with you. So this was great. And please do sign up for the services of the Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center. The services that they offer, sometimes even though I'm an employee there, it blows my mind the amount of services that they provide. They offer some very good services, and please utilize these services. Please, please, please. Can't stress it enough.
Thank you for that. So once again, we want to encourage you to check your email after this live session and fill out that survey that lets us know how we're doing. When we provide that data, it helps us provide these services complimentary to you. So once again, thank you for your time and attendance on behalf of the entire VI SBDC network. Mr. Edwards, it's always a pleasure partnering with you on these initiatives.
Yes.
So to everyone here, do enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Thank you.